Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here. We have today the first card review for the new expansion, something named with music, Festival of Legends. There it is on the screen. Exactly, this is the first of 11 times, so I will get much better later on. But in any case, we're going to go class by class. We're going to start here with Death Knight, so let's just get right into it. The first card here is Death Growl. 1 mana spell with an unholy rune. Choose a minion, spread its death rattle to adjacent minions. So this is a little bit difficult to trigger because, well, you need various things. You need to have multiple minions on board. You also need to have a death rattle that you actually want that's worth spreading. And, you know, I looked through a bit of the, the Death Knight cards. There really aren't that many things right now that you would even want to spread, right? Like, I mean, like, I haven't even gotten to one yet. Chillfallen Baron is one. And there is one big one, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But realistically, like, there's just nothing in the class itself that you're really looking for off of this. So you're probably just going to be looking for neutral cards. If you just happen to have a neutral 3 or 4 drop or something that has a good death rattle. So overall, that makes it pretty situational. Sometimes you just won't have them. So this becomes a very risky card. You wouldn't want to take this unless you really have a very specific thing you're looking to do this with. A lot of decks just aren't going to be able to really utilize this. So makes it very situational, not a great card overall. But in certain decks, it could be very good. Along with that, let's move on to the next card, which is a bit similar in that regard. This is Mosh Pit, a 2-mana location. They've been it's interesting with how overwhelmingly powerful the original locations were. These are so, I guess reserved is what you would say, because this is 2 mana, 2 charge locations, spend 3 corpses to give a minion reborn. The fact that you have to spend 3 corpses makes it very difficult. There is probably going to be an opportunity cost as far as, I should probably mention we're talking mainly for Arena. You actually are going to have opportunity cost once they unnerf Death Knight. You're not necessarily going to want to spend 3 corpses. You will get one back, right, from the reborn, but you, again, this just really isn't worth it, I don't think, unless, again, you're combining this with some kind of powerful death rattle. So, again, a lot of decks just aren't going to be able to do this. This one definitely is easier to pull off because you can just put it on the board. So I think it is a bit stronger, and you get to do it twice. But again, like, you need to have something specific, or else it's just not going to be worth it, I don't think. It's never going to be completely useless, at least. But yeah, it's just not going to be great in a lot of decks. Moving on next, we have Arcanite Ripper. This is a 3-mana 3/2 weapon with a single blood rune. Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 lifesteal undead. Change health on your turn while equipped to improve. So what this pretty much reads is 3 mana 3/2, summon a 3/3 lifesteal undead, because if you're hitting minions at least, you're going to be changing health because you're taking damage, right? And additional, if you happen to have ways to heal your hero, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This is the token here, which continues to grow. A 3 mana 3/2 weapon is worth saying is not very good, but the fact that there's some synergy between just getting lifesteal to get that health back, which is the whole cost of the weapon in the first place, so there's some synergy there, but also the fact that it's in blood and you usually have some ways to heal, there's a chance you can get it bigger. And a 3/2 weapon plus a 3/3 lifesteal delayed a little bit, that's pretty darn good, I think. So this is going to be a very powerful card that you'll be very happy to pick up for sure. I just don't think I would put it in like the super crazy tier, but it's a very good card. With that, we move on to the next card here, which is Death Metal Knight. 3 mana 3/4 undead with 2 blood runes. Also has taunt, costs health instead of mana if your hero was healed this turn. So by default, a 3 mana 3/4 undead is already fine, right? And if you have healing, first of all, it means you don't mind paying health most likely because you were healing yourself. But also, then this is a 0 mana 3/4 taunt all of a sudden, which is pretty nice, right? So it has taunt, so it's going to kind of potentially protect yourself to pay off for that thing. But overall, that makes it, solid, right? We're past the point where a 3 mana 3/4 taunt is great, but a 3 mana 3/4 taunt that also sometimes costs 0 seems pretty good to me. So the only problem with it is that it comes with 2 blood runes, and you might not want to actually have 2 blood runes. That would be probably the biggest problem with it. Moving on next, we have Hardcore Cultist. This is a 3-mana 2/1 undead. Battlecry, deal 2 damage, which is an okay card. I mean, I guess it was a good card several years ago. But it also has Finale to all enemies. So essentially, if you can Finale this, then instead of just being a kind of okay reactive curve minion, or I guess it can go phase 2, it's actually a Consecration on a very, very small stick. Since if you're not aware, Consecration is getting buffed to 3 mana, so it actually is just literally Consecration plus a 2/1. So Consecration is a good card, right? It's just the fact that you have to Finale it. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to. Maybe you want a Consecration on turn 4 and you don't have a 1-drop, so then you just can't do this. That's going to be a little bit awkward, and I have a feeling that that Finale condition is going to make you wish a lot of the time you just had Consecration instead of this thing. So this is not a bad card by any means, but I feel like, again, you'd probably rather just have Consecration, because the upside of the 2/1 just isn't worth the times it's just not going to work. But it's still an okay card for sure. It's only one single Frost rune, so not going to cost you too much. Next up, we have Harmonic Metal. This is a single Blood Rune card. Give 4 random minions in your hand +2/+2. I should mention now that there are several of these Harmonic type of cards, which have 2 different forms that it swaps in between. So some flavor there. But the other form is that it's give 2 random minions in your hand +4/+4. So particularly, either way, you're getting +8/+8 hand buff for 3 mana, which is very, very efficient. So that's pretty cool. But if you particularly have things that synergize, like God forbid they ever put Malignant Horror back in the game, you might want to get the +4/+4 to just do things that should never exist in this game mode. But yeah, overall, you're getting a lot of stats, so it's a little bit slow, obviously, when you play it, but this is probably going to be worth just playing on turn 3, because all of those stats are going to get you the tempo back that you spent. So I do think this is a pretty good card, because also later on, as long as you have the value to and the minions to actually use it, it's going to be pretty solid. I guess the problem with it is as a late game draw is that you're going to want to wait a turn so that you can actually get this form if you just don't have enough minions in hand. So later on it might be a little bit awkward for that reason, particularly for top decking, but you know, overall a pretty decent card, I think. Next up we have Boneshredder. A single Unholy Rune card, 5 mana, 5/4, undead, Battlecry. Spend 5 corpses to trigger and gain the death rattle of a random friendly minion that died this game. They really seem to be going on this whole Unholy Death Rattle synergy, even though, to be honest, there's a couple of them, right? Like, I do believe there's like one of the best ones you can hit would be like Ymirjar Deathbringer, for example. There are a couple, but right now it just feels like, and there aren't going to be too many in this set either, like there just aren't enough minions to really make this whole synergy thing work right now. This might be one of those things that gets better later on, but right now it's just a little bit hard to imagine. Because again, you're getting this is a very expensive, spending 5 corpses, and the death rattle has to have already died. It's just very situational, right? It seems a little bit hard to pull off, and just it's going to be a bit inconsistent, so it's one of those things, yet again, where if you happen to have the deck for it, sure, but, you know, this is a high cost, and you might just not really want to do that, because you're giving up stats as well, but it'll have its moments, I guess. Moving on next, we have Screaming Banshee, 5 mana 3/6 undead with lifesteal, and the text that after your hero gains health, summon a soul with that much attack and health. So, for example, and this is 1 blood rune, assuming you actually have the health to heal, that's one problem, is that you can't really utilize it full health, but if this thing just sticks on the board and you do have the health to heal up, this thing attacking just summons a 3/3. That's pretty awesome. And you can always use it potentially if you have other life steals, you can combo with spells and stuff. It definitely has some potential. And I know that a lot of people are really terrified about this card because it has some very good potential. However, there are going to be times that it's just going to be basically a 5 mana 3/6, and it's not quite going to do that much. The fact that it says after hero gains health, I should be more familiar, but it says after, which means if you just kill this, you probably don't get it, right? I would imagine. And that's going to limit it too. So if you can just one-shot this with a minion even, if you fireball it, they're not getting anything. But also if you one-shot with a minion, I would assume that you also don't get it. So it's not always going to be insane, but at the worst case, you're getting like a 3/6 lifesteal that also essentially forces a response out of your opponent, or else you're going to win. So it's going to be strong a lot, I believe. But, it's not always going to be the most consistent, but it's probably worth taking. And next up, I believe this is the last card here. Oh yeah, there's the other one too. This is Cagehead. 8 mana, 5/1 undead. Death Rattle, summon a 9/9 Blight Boar with charge and taunt. So this is a weird card because, obviously an 8 mana 5/1 is horrifically bad, but the whole point of it is to get that Death Rattle. And this is that one big Death Rattle that maybe you can get in some of these unholy builds, right? And obviously a 9/9 charge taunt is great in theory, but this could get silenced. They might just kill this and then remove the 9/9 before it can actually attack. There's some awkwardness there. Overall, there are probably just a lot more consistent and reliable late game cards in the game than this, so it's a little bit sketchy, but of course it's one of those things where you can try to make it work with some of those other synergies, potentially, right? Especially if you have some of that stuff, you obviously would like this, but overall I would say I'm not a giant fan of it, just because it's just not always going to work. The fear of silence is, really big, right? Even if you give it Reborn, it could still get silenced, right? That's a little painful. But of course, it could be, it's a lot of value if it does work. Moving on to the last card here, we have Climactic Necrotic Explosion. This is a 10 mana spell with one of each rune. And by the way, this card is not discoverable. They've already announced, so you cannot discover this. Don't assume that you can discover this with other classes. You cannot. So you actually have to be a Rainbow Death Knight and get this card in the legendary slot to see it, meaning you're almost never going to see this. But it's lifesteal, deal 5 damage, summon 2 1/1 souls, but these are randomly improved by corpses that you've spent. So at a base, this is terrible. If you spend a whole bunch of souls, the way it supposedly works is that it can increase the damage dealt, it can increase the number of souls summoned, it can increase the attack, or it can increase the health, and it's completely random between those 4. So you have to spend a whole lot of corpses to even get this to be even remotely good. If you do spend a lot, this thing becomes kind of like a Sire Denathrius kind of level, right? But it requires a whole lot of synergy than just having minions die. So if you happen to get all that, you could theoretically get this to work, but it's going to be a little bit hard without actually being able to construct your deck. But with that is it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the YouTube comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those things. We got to move on to the other 10 reviews, so appreciate y'all hanging out. We'll see you guys in the next one.